Okay.
Good morning, dear Albuquerque Mennonite friends, and I'm so pleased to be with you today and very humbled. And what a glorious place to be here in the garden, which is the theme for your summer reflections and your worship service together. So today we're going to be reflecting on the Isaiah passage. And I'd like to read just this first part that we're going to reflect on and then just move into this a little bit. And Isaiah says, "The earth is utterly broken. The earth is torn asunder. The earth is violently shaken. The earth staggers like a drunkard. It sways like a hut. Its transgression lies heavy upon it. And it falls, and it will not rise again." These words of Isaiah 24:19 through 20 do not paint an optimistic picture, nor does the theme you've chosen for today, exploitation. In fact, when I realized what I was to reflect upon with you, I thought, oh, my dear Mennonite brothers and sisters, hasn't the coronavirus lockdown, economic distress and disparity, the unveiling of our racial injustices and violence, and the reality of climate injustice been enough? Do you need a Sunday to focus on exploitation and this apocalyptic Isaiah theme? I thought maybe you need to take a break from it all. But then, a quote, Dorothy Day, the foundress of the Catholic worker movement, often spoke and borrowed from Dostoevsky's book, The Brothers Karamazov, came to me. Love in reality is a harsh and dreadful thing compared to love in dreams. We dig into Isaiah and how we are part of the exploitation of our beautiful common home and our community of beloved brothers and sisters because we love so deeply. We must dig more deeply to understand, reflect upon, and act because we love. Isaiah reminds us today of destruction and devastation that happens when we fail to love and cherish, when misplaced power, greed, and ego replace our true nature and call. Today, in this reality, we hear the echoes of Isaiah all around us. We feel sorrow and sadness, even depression, because what we love and cherish of community, earth, land, creatures, dignity, and life itself is in an apocalyptic moment. But we feel so deeply because we love so deeply, and we desire change so deeply, and to be part of an evolutionary transformation fueled by our actions in community, love, and the Spirit of God. I can only suffer, and we can only suffer and work in the measure of love and of the grace that flows through us to make change. The prophetic apocalyptic Isaiah, who speaks of the destruction of Judah, holds contemporary reflections for us. The term earth is used again and again, and in a biblical sense carries a deep understanding of land, of place and home. Earth and land is the embodiment of the sacred covenant we are reminded of in the story of Noah. It speaks of being of earth, or Adamah, from the book of Genesis, where we are invited to be gardeners and caretakers, to cherish the earth that makes up our very bodies and our existence. Land and earth also symbolize power, self-sufficiency, and legacy that we leave. The verbs in this Isaiah passage, utterly broken, torn asunder, violently shaken, stagger like a drunkard, sways like a hut, falls and will not rise again, paint a very devastated picture of the earth, but also of our covenant of love with God. This is a scene of utter collapse and devastation, and it is of what we thought to be a strong and dependable earth. It is a picture that we do not want to look at, much as our present moment is one we don't like to see. Isaiah describes what we all are feeling right now. But why? And how did we get from this beautiful garden to this place of devastation and exploitation? A story. A blackbird found a large piece of food in the village and flew out into the sky with the food in its beak. A flock of its brothers and sisters chased after him and raucously attacked him and the food, pulling it from his beak. The blackbird finally let go of the last piece, and the frenzied flock left him alone. The bird swooped and dived and thought, I have lost the food, but I have regained the peaceful sky. We are like this bird in some ways, taking the largest pieces of food, hoarding more and more, not sharing in community, creating unrest and destruction. We do not realize that what we really want is peace. We are part of a system of exploitation. Exploitation means to take natural resources, to take dignity from people, from the earth, creatures, the land, and it's part of the fabric of a racial caste system and climate change destruction. I find it interesting that the first known use of the word exploitation was in 1795, which is often also cited as the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Exploitation colonialism in many countries became a national economic policy of conquering countries to exploit populations for labor, slavery, natural resources, financial gain, and it was through colonial governments that were most often aligned and sanctioned by Christianity and missionary work. Fast forward to today. This worldview is still in place. This worldview has been unveiled in full force within the last 3 months, as we see the sins of economic and health disparity and racial injustice systemically executed. Even before the virus, however, we were experiencing this worldview gone wild in climate change, fires, floods, hungers, and more. Christianity and other religions are linked to the sanctifying of exploitation through a misinterpretation of Genesis and misled understandings of dominion in Genesis. Ilia Delio, a Franciscan sister and founder of the Omega Center, has a website, and in her recent newsletter she explores in a very different way this moment that we're living in with racial injustice, the virus, economic collapse, and climate change. Her work explores these themes and the need for revolutionary transformation of religion and our understandings of God. As part of your spiritual practice this week, I invite you to go onto her site and read and reflect with her piece. Here in New Mexico, this land of enchantment, in many places, could be the very land Isaiah describes today. The earth is utterly broken, torn asunder, like a drunkard swaggering. I would like to share 2 stories of many stories from just 2 places in our land with our people that have spoken to me of exploitation as I've worked with New Mexico Interfaith Power and Light, but also to show that love is at work. A few years ago, about 30 people gathered in an organized, prayerful pilgrimage to the sacred Mount Taylor and to the Jack Pile Mine at its base. Jack Pile Mine is the world's largest open-pit uranium mine in the world. While it was to be reclaimed, that has not happened. It is now a Superfund site within the sacred lands of the Laguna Pueblo people. A group of us traversed the expanse, standing on what was left of a mesa, as we blessed the land and the people with waters from around the world. We prayed alone and together for forgiveness and healing for this exploited place, devoid of native plants, animals, and spirit. The legacy of this place will always be a nuclear fuel cycle sacrifice zone now. But solidarity work with the Multicultural Alliance for Safe Environment offers a healing and transformative effort for the devastation of this land, water, health, and the community. In New Mexico, there are many sacrifice zones, communities of life sacrificed for short economic gain even, or national security agendas. Southeast New Mexico is home to the nuclear waste and now an assault by the oil and gas industry that has grown a metropolis of oil derricks, tanks, pipes, venting, and flaring methane pollution in what was sacred desert. A year ago, New Mexico Interfaith Power and Light organized a prayerful immersion retreat to the Permian Basin in southeast New Mexico. We listened to the concerns of health and environment from the people who live there. We saw through high-powered cameras methane pollution normally visible not to the naked eye. Yet we saw it through powerful cameras and realized that it was 80% more powerful than CO2 in creating climate change over the short term. We stopped and prayed for healing and wisdom along the way with rigs and derricks rather than church spires in the background. The experience was a grace-infused moment that brought people of faith from Albuquerque to share with brothers and sisters in southeast New Mexico. It resulted in the Permian-based grassroots group Citizens Caring for the Future, which was formed and led in part by ordained and unordained faith leaders, including your very own Mennonite pastor, Nick King. Over the months, we have worked with CCFF to grow outreach, to organize educational events, to speak at public hearings, to promote new state regulations for methane, to work to reform bonding issues with the state land office for industry, and to engage in many other actions of love. The Permian Basin is home to some 40,000 oil and gas wells. It is a place of exploitation, mostly for financial gain of a few. The Permian is a place that assaults the senses and our soul, and the land of enchantment, and God's creation. Driving home from there, the folks from Albuquerque in the van shared how depressed they felt, how they could not get out of their sight the devastation of land and water from so many oil and gas wells, tanks, pipes, flares, vents, and the smell. One person said the sight was apocalyptic. Isaiah prophetically calling to us in our state. Our prophetic response to Isaiah is to turn from apocalyptic behaviors, policies, and systems to transformative love in reality. Let us recognize that we are earth. Let us fall in love again with wonder and awe. Let us embrace the grace of it all. Let us be filled with divine holiness, sheltered in our common home. And let us commit to be transformative and holy love in reality. Amen.